something that human nature struggles with. All of us surely know something of this. So Lord, help us be attentive, help us be focused in on what you have to say. Give us ears to hear, we pray in Jesus' name, amen. Dr. Francis Schaeffer was a well-known theologian and philosopher of the 20th century, American theologian and philosopher. Later in life, Dr. Schaeffer and his wife decided they were going to become missionaries in Europe and in Switzerland. So they went to Switzerland and they were trying to find a place to minister. They figured they needed to buy a home. They wanted to have this home. They wanted to open it up to young people, and so that young people could come in and live with them even, and they could then teach them all that they knew, with the difficult answers to the answer to the different questions that young people were having in that time. Now, the problem was they had neither a home nor the money for a home. And yet they felt like that God wanted them there, and they were in Switzerland. And it came down to the point where they had a day, 24-hour period, where they needed to find a house and the money for a house, or they were going to have to leave Switzerland. The story is told that they believed they were to be there, and they prayed, Lord, you're going to have to provide a house and the money for it, or we're going to have to leave. Well, within the next day, they were contacted by a realtor who had a home unexpectedly come up in the Swiss Alps. And the next day in the mail, received a check for the amount of that house. God had provided an amazing way. Now I find that what I find really interesting, especially interesting, is the couple who sent the check. Well, they had been people without means, without much means. They had been people who had been faithfully praying for the Schaeffers in their ministry, but they didn't have any money to send. Well, one day at work, the husband received a huge, or rather large, unexpected bonus. The couple was so excited. They first thought they would buy a new car. After thinking about it, they thought, well, we don't need a new car. Then they thought, well, let's buy a little house, rent it out for some extra income. It'll make life more comfortable for us. So as they were looking at this small house, they saw termites in the beams. And the wife said to her husband, look, Art, doesn't that remind you of the verse which says, I lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth where moss and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal? But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. She then asked her husband if he would be willing to literally take that money and invest it in heaven. Would you be willing to give it to the Lord's work? She asked her husband, and he said he would. They then sent the check to the Schaeffers, which arrived just at the right time. Now, our passage this morning is vitally connected with the passage we covered a couple weeks ago, which was really essentially a warning against greed. Today's passage, similar in the sense that the world's goods are an allurement to greed, the world's goods are also can be an occasion for worry. It can cultivate, when we pursue the world's goods, it can cultivate the sin of worry. It has been said that greed can never get enough. Worry is afraid that it will never have enough. Today's text is a call to put worry to death by trusting and seeking the Lord. The answer to avoiding both greed and worry is to make sure we're pursuing our life in Christ, that we're living for eternity. Worry stems from misunderstanding and even more so from unbelief, and its remedy is found in pursuing kingdom priorities. And those three things will be our three headings this morning. Our first one, the worrier's misunderstanding. Look with me in verse 22. The worrier's misunderstanding. Excuse me. Verse 22. And he said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about your body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. So similar to the greedy person who thinks life is found in the world's goods, so the worrier thinks that he's finding some life in having. Jesus exhorts us, do not worry. Your translation may say, do not be anxious, do not worry. Same thing. The word, original, means a debilitating anxiety. That's what the word means, a debilitating anxiety. Now, there's a difference between proper concern and sinful worry. There's a place for being concerned. We should be concerned for people. We should be concerned. We should have a caring attitude when people are hurting, when things go wrong. Paul had a burden for the churches. But proper concern, when it's proper concern, it leads us to action. It leads us to attack the problem. Paul would pray. His concern would lead him to write letters. It would lead him to make visits to the church. It would lead him to want to teach them so that they could grow. Proper concern leads to proper action. Proper concern attacks the problem. Now, normal concern becomes worry when thoughts become focused on changing the future. Thoughts become unproductive. It's debilitating. It causes us to neglect responsibilities. And it erodes hope. That's when proper concern becomes worry. Worry does no good. Jesus exhorts us, do not worry about what people in general. Really, this is about, Jesus is saying food, clothing. It would really include all the things of life. And in fact, in Matthew's parallel account, he says, about your life. That's what he says. Do not worry about your life. And then he adds clothing and food. Really, we're talking about all those things that the people of the world think encloses life. Shelter, food, clothing, vacations, whatever. The people of the world think about what life is. In America, it might be, nice restaurants, nice wardrobes, spacious, comfortable homes, nice cars. But what he's saying there is, do not worry about these things. Life isn't found in these things. Now, we got to have them, right? Yeah. But we don't want to make where we eat, what we eat, the clothes we wear, where we live, an end of themselves. Because that's what the world does. They make these things the things they're chasing. They want more and bigger and better. We're not to live for those things to be the ends. Those things for the Christian are things that supply us in our service for Christ in the world. That's how we're to look at those things. We see this in the world around us. They're pursuing these things. This is what makes them happy a lot of times, and what makes them mad a lot of times. Life is about work hard and enjoy the fruit of it with the good things of life. That could be the motto of the world. But really, what Jesus is telling us, and this is directly related to worry, but life is more. It's more than nice clothes and houses. And to worry about these things, well, that is a sign of unbelief. And that brings us to our second heading, the worrier's unbelief. Jesus is going to go on to give us 3 lesser to greater arguments that make his point here. Look at me in verse 24. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They neither have storehouses or barns, yet God feeds them. How much more value are you than the birds? Now, ravens in the Old Testament were clearly in Leviticus, God says they're a detestable creature, a detestable bird, he calls them. They're unclean. They're scavengers. Yet, God cares for them. He's using them, this detestable bird, a scavenger that he's saying, still God provides for them. He takes care of them. Psalm 147:9 says he gives the young ravens that cry. He gives to the young ravens that cry. In Job 38:41, he says, who provides for the raven its prey? The answer is God does. In a conversation in a tree one day between a robin and a sparrow, the robin said to the sparrow, I should really like to know why these anxious human beings rush about and worry so. And the sparrow said to the robin, friend, I think that it must be that they have no heavenly Father, such as cares for you and me. You see, God feeds the detestable raven. How much more you who are made in the image of God? How much more you who he gave his Son to redeem? Look with me in verse 25. And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to the span of his life? Worry is truly worthless. It doesn't ever accomplish anything. In fact, worry is nothing but a thief. It steals us. It steals joy out of our life, hope, health, steals our rest. It tempts us to more destructive sins. Worry is never profitable. Verse 26, and then you are not able to do such a small thing as that, in other words, add an hour to your life. Why are you anxious about the rest? If you can't really do anything, why do you worry so? Verse 27, consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you that even Solomon in all his glory is not arrayed like one of these. And then a third, but if God so clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today, and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? You see that, a little faith? He equates worry with unbelief. The worrier isn't trusting God. When we worry, listen, when we worry, we're not trusting the Lord. Now, I know this is something of a respectable sin. If I were to ask everybody to raise your hand if you struggle with lust, we'd be really reluctant, okay? Even, you know what I'm saying? Hardly any of us would want to do that. Very shameful. Okay? Raise your hand if you struggle with worry. Well, I think most of us would be like, yeah, me. Because there's no shame in it. It's something of a respectable sin. But we got to understand, this is not something to be proud of. Worry reveals a defect. And according to Jesus, it's a sign of unbelief. So it's a serious thing, according to Jesus. I put myself in that category too. It's something of a respectable sin in our culture. But listen, we need to understand that God feeds the birds. He clothes the grass. He will meet our needs. But what if I lose my job? What if the stock market crashes and my retirement goes? Listen, God is saying he's going to take care of you. He's going to make sure you have food, shelter, and clothing. He's going to take care of you. Yeah, but you don't understand. I want to live with this sort of, I want to have this, and I want to, oh, okay. Well, that reveals something different, doesn't it? We want this side of the lifestyle. Do you know what that reveals then is maybe we're trying to find our life. Maybe we're buying into this thing that life is found in having this stuff. And then if I can't have this stuff, that causes me to worry. But God's saying, no, life isn't found in those things. And he'll provide what you need. Look at verse 29. But do not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be worried about the things of life. Don't be worried. Then verse 30. For all the nations of the world seek after these things. He's talking about the unbelieving world here, not the people who know God. And your Father knows that you need them. He's saying this is how unbelievers live. They worry about the things of life, that they think that are the things of life, the things of the here and now, the things that they have, they want to have. That's what they're living for. But you're not to be that way. Your Father knows what you need and will provide what you need. When we worry, we deny what God has said. We deny that He will provide our needs. We deny His goodness. Sure, He'll take care of the birds. I know that. By the way, our birds are our teachers. So when you get up and you look at the birds, they're to be teachers all the time. God's providing. One doesn't fall dead apart from the Father. They're to be our teachers. Sure, God takes care of the birds. But when we worry, we say, but He isn't going to really take care of me. We deny what God has said. We deny His goodness. We also deny His sovereignty, that He is governing our situation and will govern our future situations, and that He will provide in His timing what we need. He says He will. When we worry, we question even the godness of God, whether He's really there. Now let's look at the remedy. The worrier's remedy. This is my third heading. The remedy is given in the form of two exhortations and a heart principle that we must understand. So two exhortations and a heart principle that we must understand under my third heading. The first exhortation, verse 31. Now again, we're getting into the realm of the remedy. He says, instead, seek His kingdom, and these things will be added to you. To seek something is to make it our chief desire, our main objective, make it our foremost aim. When we seek something, when we're seeking something, that's what we're doing. It's our chief desire, our foremost aim. Seek His kingdom. The kingdom is the rule of God, the sphere of salvation, the realm of grace, a love relationship with Christ, who is the King. We're to seek the kingdom. That's the remedy to your worry. To seek His kingdom is to live for God and His glory by serving Him according to His word, and to make that our main thing in life. I have to ask you this morning, is that your main thing? Is that your chief aim? To glorify and enjoy God? I mean, is that what you're really seeking in life? What am I seeking? What do I really want out of life? Is it to enjoy God and glorify Him? Is that your chief aim? If it is, worry shouldn't be a problem. Of course, then he says this in verse 32. Now, sometimes we think, well, I don't know if I seek Him and I invest, if I do that, I don't know if I'll be saved. I don't know is God reluctant to give salvation? I hear these other people saying God elects people. No, listen to what he says. Fear not, little flock. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. God is not reluctantly holding out salvation. He's not reluctantly holding out the kingdom to people. No, it's His good pleasure to give whoever comes to Him, to give them the kingdom. Whoever seeks Him will find. It just works that way. God is good, and whoever seeks it finds it. It's not risky business. It's not risky business to seek first His kingdom, to make that your chief aim in life. It's not risky at all. It's a sure thing. And then comes the second exhortation, verse 33. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that do not fail, where no chief thief approaches and moth does not destroy. Now, sell your possessions. Well, somebody's saying, well, I noticed you wore that coat a few weeks ago. You didn't sell that thing. Well, let's take a moment to explain this. It can be a bit tricky here. First of all, it is an error if we dismiss the force of this exhortation. Sell your possessions. It's an error if we just write it off and say, well, that isn't realistic, let's just move on. It would be an error to do that, okay? But it would also be an error to fail to interpret this in the light of the rest of the Scriptures, okay? That would also be equally as bad an error. But let's just say this. If we take this wooden literally, meaning you go sell everything, your cars, your house, your socks, your groceries, everything, tomorrow morning you're going to be calling me, borrow a pair of socks, and for a ride to work. Okay? That isn't what he means here. How do you know that? Well, first of all, when we interpret it in the light of the rest of the Bible, there are many other scriptures that make it clear that we don't have to sell everything we have. 1 Timothy chapter 5. Let's read this because we want to see this. 1 Timothy chapter 5. Chapter 6, 17 and 18. 1 Timothy 6, 17 and 18. Now this is written later than the Gospels. This is written by the Apostle Paul to Timothy. And this is how Timothy, the pastor, is to instruct the people in the church. He says, "As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us everything to enjoy." Oh, you mean God gives rich people things to enjoy? Yeah, that's what the Bible says. "They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous, and ready to share." Well, I thought if they obeyed that command to sell everything, they wouldn't have anything. Well, again, we're not to take that wooden literally. How do we understand this? Well, this is something of a hyperbolic statement. What does that mean, hyperbole? Hyperbole is a purposeful exaggeration to make a point. So Jesus, this is a valid form of teaching in the day. Jesus used this often. Remember, he said, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Did he really mean that, literally? No. But what he meant was radically take measures to deal with the sin. Jesus used hyperbole in many places. And this, I believe, is a hyperbolic statement. In other words, he's saying, listen, if this is all true, which it is, better just go sell everything and give it to the poor, because you'll have treasure in heaven, and rust and moth won't destroy. The point is if you have extra and someone has a need, well, you're just better off rather than putting that in the bank. You're better off giving that to that person in need, and that will go on ahead of you into eternity, and you'll enjoy that investment there. That's his point. We see this in the early church. Acts of the early church, as they were getting together. People in Jerusalem, the Jews would come to salvation. A lot of times if a Jew would come to Christ, they would lose everything. Their family would banish them from everything. They would just have the clothes on their back. And there were a lot of people Christians that had extra property and land. They would start selling that stuff. That's what happened in the book of Acts. If you read it, early chapters of the book of Acts, they would sell some of that extra stuff so that they could provide for those people in need. That's the principle. But we also know that Ananias and Sapphira, which sold a piece of property and claimed they only got this much when they actually got this much, they claimed they got this much, they were lying. They were called on the carpet and said, "Why are you trying to be super spiritual by saying you got this much when you actually got this much? You were keeping all this for yourself, but you're wanting us to believe that you were giving all of it away." That was a sin of lying to the Spirit of God, and that was a sin because he says, it was yours in the first place. You didn't have to lie about it. You could have done whatever you wanted with it. The point is, again, without removing the force of the exhortation, it doesn't mean you have to go out and sell your socks and your car. But you should be generous. And we should be so focused on the kingdom that even if a brother in the pew next to us needs something and we have extra, we should be willing to make that investment in them. That is the force of the exhortation. That's how the couple in our introduction lived, according to that principle. They invested that in the kingdom. Finally, the principle in verse 34. "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Now, we are so wired. This is how we're wired. You'll notice this, just be a student of your own heart. You're so wired that where your heart is, your money and your time go. It's just the way you're wired. And where your money and your time go, your heart will follow. They're connected. It goes both ways. And so, this reveals your heart. All you have to do is look at your checkbook. All you have to do is look at your spare time. Spare time. What do I do with my spare time? Well, what do I do with my checkbook? You'll see where your heart is. And that's the point. They're vitally connected. And if our heart is in the kingdom, if our heart is with God and His work, if our heart is with serving the Lord, pursuing Him, seeking Him, cultivating our love relationship with Him, if that's where our heart is, there'll be no worries. Now, you heard the saying, you can't take them with you, right? Now, that's true. But you can send it on ahead. And you've never seen a U-Haul connected to a funeral procession, at least I haven't. But what you normally do see is someone either being separated from everything they loved, or you're seeing someone going on to enjoy the treasures that they've prepared for themselves by living for the Lord. Now, if you're seeking the kingdom and your treasure is being laid up in heaven, you can be assured that there's nothing to be worried about. There's nothing to be worried about. Let's pray. Dear Father, we're thankful for your instruction about worries. And Lord, help us to apply this. It's one thing to hear it, to know it, to agree, to say, yeah, I know that's true. Lord, but it's another to take these things and to think about them. To take these things and meditate about them. To take these things and apply them to our life and make decisions and actions that correspond. And so we ask you to work that in us. Lord, that we would be people who are seeking the kingdom. That we are people who are so believing this stuff, so confident of the truths that you have given to us, that we know that when we do invest in the kingdom, it will be stored up for us to enjoy for eternity. And so work these things into us. Give us a confidence in your word. Apply these things to our heart, we pray. In Christ's name, amen. This morning we'll take communion.